All right, welcome back, folks. Trump on the issues. Why is he so far ahead of Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis? Hint, drain the swamp. All right, let's welcome Kellyanne Conway, former counselor to President Trump, Fox News contributor, author of the very good book, Here's the Deal. Kellyanne Conway, before we get to the heavy-duty issues, Donald Trump always knew where you were. He didn't lose you for a week. He didn't lose you in Walter Reed Hospital, thankfully. He didn't lose you anywhere. He didn't lose me. In fact, as I said before with Sarah Sanders, he tracked me down in a movie theater one Sunday night because he didn't like something I said on one of the Sunday talk shows. But, I mean, really, I want you to weigh in on this. I know it's redundant. We've covered it in earlier segments. But, you were senior staff, cabinet level. You were in touch with the president all the time. All of us are on guard. The guy could call any time. How the hell do you not talk to your defense secretary for a week?
Larry, it confounds me. And I want to take it a step further. Even though the president and the vice president, Biden and Harris, have very thin public schedules, anybody can look at them any day, they often include, or they always include, the PDB, the Presidential Daily Brief. That often will include members from the Pentagon, in fact, the Secretary of Defense himself. So the question is, while we're at war in Ukraine, war at the border, war in the Middle East, why not only does the president not know where the Secretary of Defense is, but why hadn't the president or the vice president, for that matter, reached out to the Secretary of Defense on any number of issues? And yes, you're correct. I want your viewers to realize that there are people in the Situation Room whose job it is to know where the secretaries and the deputy secretaries are at all times. And so I think that Lloyd Austin's excuses and his reasons that he wants privacy are terrible. But we have to ask ourselves why there's no regular, ongoing, almost ubiquitous communication between the Pentagon and the White House. And I think Sarah hit it. It's a lack of transparency and accountability by this administration at all times. If Joe Biden doesn't know where he is, he can't keep track of everyone else. Larry, I'll take it one step further very quickly. I think what Trump presided over that people really miss and crave again is what I call the democratization of information. You had a president in the briefing room, under wing at the plane, or when the helicopter was waiting to take him to the plane. You had him inviting the press into the Oval Office. You had him showing up at different things, open press. So he made himself available. And that meant, Larry, that we had an administration where people, whether you're the plumber on the job looking at your phone, the stay-at-home mom watching the news, or the billionaire CEO with 30 people curating your social media inbound and outbound, everybody received a presidential communication at the same time, whether it was on Twitter, now Truth Social, or certainly from the president's own voice. We are starving for that again. I think that, plus draining the swamp, plus these lack of promises and instead delivery that President Trump will do again, I think that's why he's way ahead in the polls.
I just want to say, by the way, your point about availability is crucial. I mean, you and I saw it daily. Sarah saw it daily. I mean,
Yes.
Trump would go. I mean, sometimes he'd go into the briefing room. We wouldn't want him to go into the briefing room. He'd go into the briefing room anyway. He would do it by the helicopter on the way to Marine One. He insisted on talking to the media. They'd line up, and he would do it. There were hundreds of times. Joe Biden doesn't want to do any of that. But, the other thought, Kellyanne, your daily briefing, the intelligence briefing, which is Defense Department, CIA, DNI, et cetera, and various White House staffers, you shouldn't miss your defense secretary. Those people in the sit room and those White House operators are terrific. I mean, that was my experience. They're smart, and they do their job. So it's not easy to slip one by. I mean, DOD had to basically be in shutdown mode in order to prevent the Situation Room staff or the White House operators. I mean, they had to be in shutdown mode, and I think that should be part of an investigation. I asked J.D. Vance about that. They need a thorough investigation. Kellyanne, look, one other thing. I know everyone wants to cover the primaries, horse race, polls, et cetera, et cetera. The polls show Trump winning handily. We'll see. Polls aren't votes. Votes are votes. But. It just occurs to me, get your take. One of the troubles with former Governor Nikki Haley, who's not a bad person, she's a good Republican, et cetera. I may disagree with her on certain things, whatever. Or DeSantis, but particularly Haley. She's not going to overturn the Washington establishment. she's not going to drain the swamp. Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp. He devoted himself to it in the first term, and he's smarter now and wiser and learned, from mistakes and so forth, and would have a better shot at overturning the swamp in the second term. I mean, to me, that's kind of a divide, a DMZ issue between him and these other candidates.
It's huge, Larry. Americans intuit that there are 12, 13 bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. all doing the same job and not doing it well at all. And we're paying for them to do that. And I do think that as personnel as policy, President Trump probably learned from the first term where he was able to effectuate some of the draining of the swamp. Not all of it got done, but you can't replace that with people who are swimming in the swamp and all the swamp's dollars. The swamp is quicksand. And I think there are people who are they're career non-political appointees, Larry. They're very wired into the media. They're sources to the media. They're nameless and faceless, but they are not blameless. And even if they're shameless, they're not blameless. And I think making sure that we root that out, where we have duplicative people working on the same things. We just simply don't need all of that. And I think a true businessman and an outsider can do that. Look, Vivek Ramaswamy, he basically would leave the swamp bone dry. He's very upfront about this. All I hear Ron DeSantis really say about it is that Donald Trump failed to drain the swamp. I don't think Nikki touches it as much. And look, when I look at all their economic plans, I reviewed them again today in preparation for going on the Economic Goat Show, I'm really surprised to see Ron DeSantis pushing a flat tax because he talks more about Fauci than his flat tax. If he would get out there and push that a little bit more. Nikki Haley's got the Freedom Plan. But look, a lot of their positions look exactly like Donald Trump's positions. So we're back to the beginning, aren't we? Which is, if you're going to get the same thing policy-wise, why many voters are saying, why go with those who are promising it when you can actually go with the guy who delivered it? And last point, you mentioned it. The primary really hasn't been that exciting. It's the contest between Joe Biden and Donald Trump that has so many rank-and-file voters looking at this cage match rematch. Donald Trump right now is leading among independents. He's going to get more Hispanics, many more African Americans. He's doing very well among first-time voters. Some of them are young and literally first-time voters, but some of them are people who are new citizens voting for the first time. They're going to come off the sidelines. It's ironic that the person that's still positioned as the biggest outsider to the swamp is the former president, much more so than, look, you got people like no labels. They're courting governors and senators and congressmen. By their very definition, they have labels. They're governors and senators and congressmen. So you're left with one guy who's a true outsider to the system, and it looks like people have wanted that for quite a while. They got Obama, then they got Trump. They went all the way back the other way, Larry, and they got the bureaucrat. They got the Loch Ness monster of the swamp in Joe Biden. He's been here for more than half a century, and they don't want that. I think nobody has helped Donald Trump more in this big lead than Joe Biden. Yeah. You contrast their two presidencies, and it's a very clear choice, not a referendum, a clear choice for many Americans.
All right. We will leave it there. I think you were dead right. If you find a defense secretary, let me know. Just please send for help. Kellyanne Conway, the best of the best.
See you in Iowa.
See you in Iowa.